Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Today, inshallah ta'ala, we have with us brother Qasim Rafique. He's born in Wales and raised in Scotland, UK. He now resides in USA with his wife and children. Qasim has been an adventurer for his early days, having experienced the heights of climbing Mount Everest and delving into the depths of international ocean rescue work. Qasim has always sought new challenges. With his dedication for community, he served for 7 years. I did not know how to pronounce this, at Scotland Police as a police officer. The real game changer came in the form of inspiration and training from some of our era's great figures in personal development, including Sh.Muhammad Alshareef, Brandon Burchard, Tony Robbins, Sinik and Kerwin Rae. And mashallah tabarakallah, through an ever-growing social media presence, Qasim went on to pen his first published piece, 7 Life Lessons on Myths of Marriage. This was so warmly received across the globe that it ignited Qasim's passion for writing. He is currently working on his new book. His academic background is in nutrition and psychology. He is also certified NLP and CBT, NLP, Neuro-linguistic programming, and CBT meaning cognitive behavioral therapy. He was also trained by Gottman Institute based in Seattle, USA, which is the world's leading research institute in relationship science. Currently, he is continuing with ongoing professional study with the institute. Please do follow Brother Qasim at www.qasimrafique.com. And in the time when he joins us, inshallah, I would like to present this book that he's wrote, 7 Life Lessons, Myths of Marriage. Mashallah, it's a wonderful, wonderful book, a must-have actually. And he'll be joining us in just a few more seconds. Highly recommend the book. Please do. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Qasim. How are you?
I'm fine, wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Jazakallah khair for waiting on me. Sorry about the delay.
No problem, no problem. It happens.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for your time, Brother Qasim. I'm a huge fan of your work, of the words that you use on social media. I came across your work about I think 3 months ago, and alhamdulillah, then I got the book, then I read the book, and then I DM'd you. I said, like, I really want to talk to you because I mean, in this field of relationship and relationship science, we have so many women working, but from Muslim men's perspective and a Muslim man working, it's rare. So thank you for the work that you do. Alhamdulillah.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on. Bismillah.
Bismillah. So do not mind me, but I'll keep this book here so that people keep looking at it, so that people know that they have to buy this book. You have to buy this book, people. It's extremely important. I'm not promoting Brother Qasim, but I'm promoting the work that he's done. It's amazing. It's beautiful, and it connects with today. It connects us with what's happening around us, and it gives us a better understanding of it. So let's start on the question answers, inshallah. Now I'll talk less, you'll talk more. Number one question is, what is the number one bad trend you have been seeing and dealing with when it comes to marriages today?
Okay, Bismillah. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam wa Rasulullah. Okay, so thank you for the question. It's not just one main issue. I obviously have a plethora of issues that come to me, and so I can't really sort of like just put them in a scale. They're so multifaceted sometimes they're interlinked. So it's not just one issue, it's like many other issues that are linked. So I mean, I can't really just define one, but I guess in essence, the most important factor that I've seen over the years is just the breakdown of communication. There's 2 main ones that come out again and again, and they're interlinked with other problems, but basically the root of it is communication issues, and the other one is intimacy issues between obviously the spouses, and which leads to a plethora of different problems. But let's just sort of like look at the concept of communication. What I've found over the years is that there's many folks from around the world, different ethnicities, different cultures, but all the exact same patterns again and again.
Yes.
And the patterns are that the wife will feel not acknowledged, not validated. She doesn't feel respected. She feels that there's no one there that she can't actually lean on her husband for support, especially emotional support. And then what happens is another flip of it. The husband's sitting there saying, but Like, you don't give me the respect where I can sort of like come back to you. And actually, it's Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, who I'm a great fan of his work. He basically has a book called Love and Respect, and he's a clinical psychologist, and he's basically put in his book regarding this sort of like vicious cycle that husbands and wife keep on falling into, and that is that you'll find that the wife, she needs to feel desired, she needs to feel safe and secure, she needs to feel loved and validated, and if she doesn't get that feeling or that sense of feeling safe and secure and loved and validated or desired, what happens is that she can't give respect, because she needs to have that safety that within her. She needs to feel that my man understands me in these departments, and he is fulfilling his role in protecting me when it comes to these areas. Now, when she doesn't get that, without even realizing, it's almost like just it oozes into the situation, especially if there's been a plethora of issues and there's been weeks and months and sometimes years have gone by, and they're basically, the husband and wife, on two different wavelengths. Yeah. So what ends up happening is that the husband then doesn't feel respected. Absolutely. He doesn't feel validated. He doesn't feel loved. Why? Because he's not feeling it from his wife. And so what ends up happening is that he can't give that back. He can't give her that love, that security, that sort of like the words of sort of like acknowledgement and appreciation. Why? Because he finds it difficult when he feels like he's got a partner who's not giving him what he needs. And so Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, what he basically says is there's this vicious loop, there's this cycle that both husbands and wife fall into, which is exactly that the husband needs to feel respected. And when he doesn't feel that respect, he can't give his wife the love and the appreciation and that safety and security emotionally. And vice versa, when the wife doesn't feel it, she can't give him respect. And they get entrapped and engulfed, and that obviously manifests into so many other issues. It manifests obviously when it comes to the issues of then intimacy. It manifests into the situation of just having quality time together. They actually can't have quality time together because they actually irk each other. Because they're on two different wavelengths now, they actually don't find it comfortable to be there in the same sort of like vicinity. And that's why some of the cases I deal with, you have some of the husbands, some couples will come to me, they've been married now for, let's just say, a decade, and they have young children, but over that decade, instead of growing together and understanding each other, they've started to slowly grow apart. Then some other cases, what ends up happening is that them same couples, like 10, 15 years, 20 years on, the kids are older, but the same patterns. What's happened from this stage now is that the husband and wife, because of this vicious circle, because of obviously the bitterment, the resentment that they have internally now against each other, that manifests in stonewalling, constant criticizing, gaslighting, defensiveness, and then also from there it stems on to sleeping in separate bedrooms. The amount of cases that I get, I'll be shocked. Sometimes it's shocking that a young man and woman, husband and wife, in their late 20s, in their 30s, and then going on to 40s, some of them are sleeping in separate rooms. Why? Because they just can't stand each other now. Yes. And they're just co-parenting. That's all they're doing, is that they're two strangers living under the same roof, just co-parenting the kids. Absolutely. And so this is one of the things that happen, or one of the manifestations of poor communication, when you can't just sit down and communicate your feelings effectively without it becoming an argument, or without it becoming bigger, or like something even bigger than what it started off with. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say there's something that the husband wants to talk to the wife about, or vice versa. The wife wants to talk to the husband about a situation, an issue that arose maybe a month ago or a week ago, or even just that evening. So what ends up happening is that they'll sit down and they'll start to discuss it. And because they don't have the tools to be able to communicate effectively, what ends up happening is that one of the partners will be feeling that my spouse is criticizing me, and a criticism is basically an attack. That's what your partner feels, is that when you start to criticize your partner, you actually feel under attack. And then what happens, according to John Gottman, who's the founder of actually the Gottman Institute in Washington, Seattle, and he's one of the world's leading authorities when it comes to relationship science, and he's actually a mathematician, and then he went on to get his PhD in clinical psychology. And so with both martial masteries of both mathematics and psychology, he's infused them, and for the last 30, 40 years, he's been studying and like the statistics and understanding relationship science. Yeah. And he's basically said that what ends up happening is that from criticism, it jumps onto defensiveness. And then when a partner is being defensive, what they're actually doing is they're either counterattacking, or what they're actually doing is playing the victim. Yes. And so some people have the knack for doing both
at the same time.
At the same time, they can counterattack and play the victim. And then from that leads to obviously contempt, which according to John Gottman is one of the most serious forms of toxicity within a marriage. It's when a husband and wife speak to each other with contempt and scorn. So it's either like you're looking down on your partner, it's almost like this grandiose, like, I'm better than you, you can't do anything proper. And they use sarcastic sort of like language, sarcastic humor against them. This sort of laced toxic sort of like form of communication is actually contempt. And the way I describe it to my clients is, when a husband and wife are speaking to each other with contemptuousness and they're like being this way with each other, the way I describe it is like this: that you've got a solid plastic ball. So you've got a solid Safia, and it's made out of thick plastic, and it's like putting it in a sink and leaving the faucet on just to drip. And imagine, instead of it dripping water, you're actually dripping acid. So it might take, do you understand? So if you've got any of these things in your marriage, if you've got criticism, contempt, stonewalling, defensive behavior, if you've got any of these four sort of like toxic communication modalities or ways of coping with communication, what ends up happening is that this faucet, which is acid, will eventually drop, or drip. And then eventually what happens is, it might take a few weeks, it might take months, it might take years, but eventually this solid plastic ball, if you go to it, will have a hole burrowed right the way through. And that's what happens to a marriage, is that if you have one or two of these within your marriage, let's say criticism and defense, then eventually you'll burrow a hole. But if you have all three or all four of these in your marriage, and this is the way your marriage is, it's almost like just getting a bucket of acid and throwing it over the ball of acid, the ball of solid plastic. It will literally start to dissolve in front of your eyes. It doesn't take much time. And that's how toxic these qualities are, all these communication styles. And contempt being, according to the Gottman Institute, is the number one and the fastest way to ruin a marriage is if you have contemptuous behavior, which then leads on to stonewalling. And some of these concepts and terminologies that I am using are obviously, some of you might be like, what's this? And maybe we can have another session for that, because I know the time is extremely limited, but it would take an hour in itself just to go through all these concepts. But it will be an honor.
It will be an honor to discuss it.
Inshallah. But in essence, these are traits within a marriage that can cause a lot of toxicity. And that's something that I'm dealing with a lot, is husband and wife, they don't understand how to communicate. And so what ends up happening is, let me just give yourself and some of the folks are watching this just now, some simple tools and strategies to be able to sort of like overcome some of these sort of like toxic traits of communication, and where you can sort of like start to build a little bit more appreciation, a little bit more empathy and respect when it comes to you understanding your partner and the way you communicate with each other. So for instance, let's just say you're having a discussion or an argument, a discussion turns into an argument. One simple strategy would be for both of you, at some point before you get into the argument or discussion, is that you actually sit back and you make a plan and say, look, how would you like to discuss matters? Like, if it is a pressing issue, how would you like to discuss it? If there's something that's like that's been irking me for weeks or months now, how would you like me to bring that up with you? And actually have a dialogue about that. And one of the safety parameters of what you can actually put within to your framework of sort of like these boundaries of how to communicate with each other is by just saying, look, if we ever get to a point where we start to feel attacked or criticized, and I start to become defensive or vice versa, or I feel that you're gaslighting me or stonewalling me, like basically not listening to me, and almost like everything I'm saying is going in from one ear and through the other, then what you do is, if you feel overwhelmed, then just say it. Just say to me, look, my love, I just can't discuss this at this moment in time because I'm emotionally flooded.
Yeah.
And because I'm emotionally flooded, I can't process any of this conversation. In fact, adrenaline is kicking in. I've got cortisol running through me. I've got this stress hormone running through me. My blood pressure is going up. I feel like am I in fight or flight mode here? Can we just have a timeout and just say to your wife or to your husband, look, I'm emotionally flooded. I promise you, I'm not going to run away from this discussion or this point that you brought up, which is it's a valid thing that you want to discuss. But what I can do is that I can promise you that let's get away just now. We're both getting heated up in this argument. We're both not seeing eye to eye. And basically I'm in this mode now where I'm emotionally flooded and I can't process anything. So let's call it a timeout. And you actually have the maturity between you both and the amicability to be amicable and say, okay, let's have a timeout. Give it an hour, give it 2 hours, whatever it is. You leave it at your partner's discretion. You decide between yourselves and then you leave. You leave that discussion. And what you do is that you decide upon a time and then you come back. But this is the nuance now. A lot of the time, husbands or wives will come to me or as couples and they'll be saying, he keeps on promising me that he's going to discuss this situation, but he keeps on running away from it, and it's me off. Like, you understand? Like it's doing that. It's like really annoying me. It's frustrating me, and vice versa. The husband will say the same thing, and like in many scenarios. And so what ends up happening is that this is an issue where if they both have an agreement, they both realize when they're starting to get flooded, they can walk away, they go out, you go your separate ways. Don't follow each other into the bedrooms, into the living room, demanding an answer like you're chickening out. You're wanting to get out of this discussion. Don't do that. That's the wrong thing. I know some people there's a plethora of different issues that we can go down. I know some people have got abandonment issues, so that triggers them. And some people have got sort of like situations where, because they've come from a past relationship that was like very traumatic, similar sort of like circumstances, it gets them triggered. And so they can't keep their cool, but you have to get into a habit of being able to speak and voice your anguish at that moment with respect and appreciation for the fact that you're still there, you're discussing it, but now it's getting to a point that you can't think right, and just leave. You go for a walk, go to the gym, go and phone your friends, go and pray, do whatever you want, spend an hour or two away, but then this is the important part, you do come back. You go make a good cup of chai, get some good cookies or cake rusk, sit down and relax, and then start to go through the issue where you are not in this hyper emotional state, or your adrenaline is shooting up and your blood pressure, your heart's racing, because like that you're not going to solve anything. So that's one technique of being able to just be mature enough to say, look, my love, I'm emotionally flooded, let's have a timeout. That would save a plethora of issues. The amount of cases I've dealt with where they've not done that, and it's led to screaming, cussing. I've dealt with cases where it's led to serious violent behavior, where like both sides are doing it. Either one side is getting seriously physically attacked, or they're both at it. You understand? And unfortunately, a lot of the times, a lot of the cases I'm dealing with, there's innocent young children witnessing all of this. And this is the thing that's really sort of like, if you take a step back and take a deep breath in, that's the thing that's so damaging, is that not only the husband and wife getting to a point where they're damaging each other, physically, emotionally, you understand? But they're also now damaging the innocent, the children are sitting there and watching mum and dad not just screaming at each other, but then escalating it to the next level where it becomes cussing and then cussing each other's families. And then from there, it leads to pushing and shoving. And like I had a family on recently, and the young teenager was telling me that he saw his mum throw a vase at his dad's face, and then the dad reacted by like grabbing her and throwing her down. Then the neighbors heard, and the police got called. And it's just like it becomes so messy. And unfortunately, this can stop all of that if you just have the decency and respect between each other to say, look, we might not see eye to eye in this situation, and currently we're just starting to we're starting to get heated, but let's call it quits. Let's take an hour or two out, and let's inshallah come back to this. That takes a level of sort of like that's a level of respect, and not only for yourselves but for the children are in the house as well. So that's one aspect. Okay, another one that I can give you is that if a husband and wife find that they can't really communicate that well, for whatever the reason is, then maybe try to sort of like look at and understand your partner like better, because there's a lot of couples come on and like you speak to them and they actually don't know each other. Like 15, 20 years has gone by, and when you ask them some deep questions about each other, they actually don't know each other. And that's the reality, is children, their careers, families, family drama, politics, everything outside overrides everything. And then eventually what ends up happening is that, again, there's a couple here who, yes, they might respect each other, they might love each other, intimacy might be fine, but they're just growing up, they're slowly growing apart. And the reason being is that they've never just sat back or made a habit of like every fortnight or once a month or whatever it is, that can be left at their discretion, just to sit down and say to each other, look, it's been like a few months, or it's been a few years, like my love, look, I just want you to know that I deeply appreciate everything that you're doing for this house. Like, you work really hard, and I just respect that you work so hard and that you do this and you give time to me, give time to the kids. And can I ask you a question? Is there any hopes or dreams or aspirations that you've got that over the last 10, 15 years that you've kind of had to sort of like forget about because of the family? Is there anything that I can help you as your spouse sort of like reach them potential sort of like lost dreams or hopes or any aspiration? And vice versa, the husband should be asking this to his wife. And this is what I'm saying, is like when I've had cases where the husband has sat down with the wife and actually said, look, I just want you to know that I really appreciate the way you are, the way you look after me, the way you have so much, like the way you look after the home, the way you're doing your own career, you're balancing everything. I just want to tell you that I really appreciate everything that you're doing. Can I ask you, what are your fears? What are your hopes? What are your aspirations? And
knowing each other again.
Exactly. And then what happens is that kickstarts a plethora of discussion. And that's the thing, is that you start to get into this mode of discussing. And something that I mean, John Gottman from the Gottman Institute, they talk about love mapping. And in essence, what I basically try to say is like, this is the thing about a couple, is like, just think of yourselves as a map. And this map, if you've been with each other, whether it's 1 year or 50 years, this map represents you. Now, that map, for a lot of couples out there in this day and age, unfortunately, that map is just a skeleton. It's just an outline.
Yes.
Do you understand? That's all it is. It's an outline of the world.
Yeah.
But what happens is, like, if you really want to understand the inner world of your partner, do you understand? You need to fill that map up. And the only way you can do that is by going in deep and getting into the habit of speaking to each other and asking each other a lot of open-ended questions, which will allow you to develop a deep understanding about your partner. I ask couples all the time, I say to couples all the time that, look, you should know your wife like the back of your hand. You should know everything about her, like her wants, her needs, her desires. You should know her hopes, her dreams, her fears. You should know even from the most nuanced, like her favorite color, her favorite food, to the most complex stuff like her childhood traumas. Was she bullied? Did she have any trauma? What, like, has she had any stumbling blocks in life that really sort of like caused a lot of problems in her sort of like development as she was growing up, or she had mental health issues? You should know everything, and vice versa. The wife should know that for the husband. And you'll be shocked. I've spoke to people who have been married for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and they don't even know the basics of each other. They don't even know the inner worlds of each other. And this is why they're then coming to relationship coaches or specialists, or going to therapists, or they're going to couples therapy, because they've grown apart. And so one of the things that I would recommend is actually sort of like getting into a habit of going into something called open-ended questions. And the best way for that is basically just jump on to Google and just type up something like relationship open-ended questions for my husband, for my wife, and then just do that. Just basically sit down and ask a lot of questions. And let me give you an example of some few that are here that I've got in front of me. Like, for instance, just ask your partner stuff like, who in your life is the most stressful for you, and why? Why do you need it? What do you need right now in your life? What things are you missing in your life? How have things changed for you in the last year? Have your goals in life changed recently? What are some of your life dreams now? What are some of your fears? And stuff like, what is the one way you would like to change? And like, these sort of like open-ended questions will then develop onto deep discussion, and you will get to understand your partner in a way that's far more deeper. Do you understand? And this is the most important part. That map, that inner world of your wife, that inner world of your husband, you should know it like the back of your hand. The couples that are most successful in their relationships are the couples that understand each other's love languages. They understand, I'll explain that in a minute, and they understand each other's inner worlds. They don't just, and they do that, they actually go out of their way to make sure that they can start up healthy conversations about the past, the present, the future, and then they can start understanding. And they ask everything. You ask from the most nuanced, like, what's your favorite aftershave? Or what's your favorite food? What's your favorite this? What's your favorite that? And then going on to the more deeper, complex sort of like questions. How do you feel about our children? Are you happy with their development? And then you'll be surprised sometimes, like a lot of what mothers or fathers will come up and start crying. They'll just burst out into tears saying, I just don't feel like I've given them the best of me. And I just feel like that's had an effect on not only their personality, but their education and this and that. But then they're there to comfort each other and say, no, but mashallah, you've done so. Like, do you understand? It's like, yes. It builds bonds, it builds connections. But a lot of couples don't do that, unfortunately. And this is a huge trend that's causing a lot of issues. And there's so many more, but I think we better move on with other questions.
Because you say in the book very nicely, you say, we must not speak simply to be heard. We must speak with purpose and intention. Absolutely. When we hope to articulate from the love that exists in our hearts with the hope to mend the situation before us, it is only then that our words can touch the hearts of our beloved. Beautiful. Absolutely. Everything that you said, you have in here in the book. Yeah. In just the one quote, mashallah, amazing.
Thank you.
7 life lessons on the midst of marriages. People are joining, people are loving what you're saying, they're agreeing with what you're saying, Brother Qasim, and they're also asking, okay, the amazing thing is that whatever they asked, you do not know what they asked, but you've already responded to it. So
okay. Great.
Great. So we have 2 more questions.
Sure, go on.
And so the second question is, what advice do you give to the young men and women seeking to get married, but not taking the action step towards it, rather enjoying the exploring, dating time period?
So basically...
Swipe next.
So swipe next, yeah. So they're basically partying like it's 1999, yep. Okay, so... okay. That's actually a very deep question, and it's so multifaceted. It's there's a lot of issues that a lot of our youth are dealing with. Actually, sorry, I'll take that back. Not just our youth. It crosses now age.
Yes.
The youth have got their own sort of like unique issues and stuff that they're dealing with, but obviously it even goes across into like people who are marrying for this, who are divorcees and stuff. I've seen the same sort of issues pan out even in this sort of like segment of society as well. And that is that, look, a lot of folks there's a hookup culture nowadays,
Yes.
which is absolutely sort of like rife at the moment, and modern day technology is not making it any easier. In fact, it's almost like throwing gasoline onto the situation.
Absolutely.
And that's a reality. We have all these apps nowadays that and other sort of like social media sort of like methods of being able to hook up, and it's causing a lot of issues. I mean, look, I'm going to split it up into like, I'm going to try to give you this example and to try to explain the situation that we're dealing with, or people like myself and others are dealing with when it comes to marriage, and like people not taking it seriously or not knowing how to actually do the courting stage, and then actually to be able to evolve from the courting stage to make a mature decision, and then from there to actually move on to, inshallah, a healthy nikah, and then to move on and start a family. A lot of folks are getting really muddled up right from the grassroots level, from the beginning. And so what's happening now is like, I like to sort of like use example of three groups. So you have three groups, okay, that we're dealing with. One is the group that are doing things in a way where it's just it's like everything's above board, it's halal, they're not transgressing any bounds. They are sort of like sticking to like safe parameters, and they're trying to do things like purely and sincerely with faith-based principles. Obviously, I'm a faith-based, I'm obviously a relationship specialist, but I'm coming from a faith-based background. So, I mean, a lot of the Muslims, and majority of my clients are Muslims from all over the world. And the thing now is like, I've seen this pattern occur. This is not just a thing that's happening in America or in the UK, by the way. This is everywhere. This, what I'm describing to you, it's global. It's happening in the Middle East. It's happening in Pakistan. It's happening in Bangladesh. It's happening in the depth of Africa. It's happening in South. It's happening everywhere. Do you understand? And this pattern is this. You have one group who will try their best to stick to faith-based principles, and actually have the courting based upon that. Yes. So it's very simple. They will sort of like, they might be a university, and they find someone that they like, and so what they do is like, they're like, okay, they get a friend or family member to approach them, and then the conversation kickstarts. And so what ends up happening is that they go, and the first thing that they'll do is, yes, look, I'm a realist. Like, I'm not going to say like, everyone just sort of like stay in your bubble and sort of like get your mums and dads involved straight away. It's not going to happen like that. Yes, if you're young, you're at university, you see someone that you like, you might, if you're trying to your best to stick to some sort of like boundaries, you will get your friend or a family member to approach them, to speak to them, to find out what they think. And if they're okay, you might sort of like meet up with them at uni and say, Salam, I'm such and such, and obviously my cousin approached you or my best friend approached you. From there, and this is now where it gets sort of like a little bit tricky. From there, this first group will realize, yep, there's a connection, there's something there. They'll go back to the families and they'll tell their families. They do not waste time. And one thing about this group of folks that I've realized is that they don't look at telling their families as a commitment. This is a level of maturity now, is to know, like, look, if I go and tell my family, it doesn't mean I'm shackled to them. Yeah. That's good. That's me now. I'm stuck to them. It doesn't mean that. It just means that I'm now going to secure a position by making sure that I've explained to my family, this is the situation. He's explained to his family the situation. Now they're in contact, and they're now basically having a helicopter view over us and making sure now that we are not crossing any boundaries. So if we do meet, let's just say we go to Costa in the UK, or we go to Starbucks here.
They do?
Or whatever. If they do go, it's not that they're going themselves.
Yeah.
They will go and they'll have a family member with them. And it doesn't mean, remember, I'm talking about people here now.
Yeah.
You understand? We're talking about the youngsters here, folks here. They will go, they'll sit down, but they won't go and date. They won't go themselves. They'll take a family member. And yes, the family member might not be sitting at the table drinking a latte with them. They'll be in a table behind them.
Yes.
And they're having a mature discussion
Yes.
about whatever they're discussing regarding the future, what their likes and dislikes, and they're asking all the hard questions. And this then can be obviously with families there, they go to each other's homes, they have some privacy where obviously there's an open door left or something where they can sit and they can discuss amicably like mature adults. That's sort of like group one.
Yeah.
And things then either work out for them or they decide to part.
Yeah. Yes.
Now group two, okay, there's three groups. That's group one. Group two are the group that just head in straight into the deep end. It's just like, wow, you're drop dead gorgeous. And they're just like, okay, I really like you and let's start dating. And that's it. It's just full on, no boundaries, sort of like, it's just like, this is the one I want. And it's just like full on boyfriend, girlfriend situation. And what ends up happening, I'm talking about Muslims here. I'm talking about Muslims here.
Yes.
Full on boyfriend, girlfriend situation. So there's category one, is category two, who just basically just dive straight into the deep end. They like each other, they start dating. Yeah. And then what ends up happening is that from there, that group get involved with transgressing bounds that, like, literally they transgress all bounds, because it starts either from going out and dating alone, transgressing it, and then from there it ends up becoming kissing, and from kissing it becomes foreplay, and then from foreplay it becomes intimacy, like going to hotels and like lying to the parents of where they're going. It's all, this is all group two.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's group three.
There is after that.
There's group three, and the group three is actually what the majority of people that I'm seeing that I come across. It's the majority, which is that you have young Muslims or even like older folks who are getting married either for the first time in their 30s or they're divorcees. But what happens is that the third is this group. And this is the thing that you all have to listen very carefully to. What happens is that from, obviously, we're talking about Muslims here who have some level of faith or background in faith, and what ends up happening is group number two that I mentioned, they've kind of like, they're just not bothered about it. Do you understand? Group three are the folks that actually do have some sort of level, their parameters, their boundaries, they have faith-based principles. But what happens is that they start off really sort of like, I like you, do you understand? I like you, let's get to know each other. And so what ends up happening is that, so this gray, I call this like this group that's sort of like the gray area. So one is clear, one is completely, and then you have this gray area. And that gray area is where they like each other, they start discussing, they start communicating, and they really do try hard in the beginning to keep things within a boundary. But there's some things that they do which then forks off into two trajectories. Oh, wow. Okay, it's getting a little bit complicated, but just stay with me, okay?
Yes.
So this third group, which is it's a majority of the people that I deal with when it comes to premarital or dealing with family coaching, when I'm speaking to them all, or I'm dealing with this couple. Now, this is what it is. So this third group, they splinter into either two trajectories, and that is like they're doing everything they can, but they start to slip. So what that means is, and there's a plethora of reasons why they do this, and I haven't got time to get into it, but let's just say they start to get emotionally attached. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a normal sort of like a bit of an excitement there, like, wow, mashallah, she's amazing, she's like this, she's like that, she's mashallah practicing, she ticks all the boxes, she's this, and she's was academically endowed, and vice versa for the guy. But it's more a case of like, they start to talk to a point without any boundaries. They have it in the beginning, but eventually starts to become slightly sort of like flirtatious. And then it's almost like it becomes kind of like a little bit of flirtatiousness here, a little bit of a sexual innuendo here, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then it's a case of like just leaning back in the bedroom, just speaking all night to the guy, to the brother, or all night to the sister. And they're not, this is the thing, it doesn't start off with the flirtation. It just starts off with like, talking about Islam, talking about what the Dawah that did, or the MSA, or the understand that they're involved with.
100%.
And it starts off with all of this, like the amount of work and or the degree and what their families are like and the culture. It starts off with all of this, and sometimes it goes on throughout the night and it goes on for weeks sometimes. But what ends up happening is it starts to, you're going now in that trajectory, and eventually you get emotionally attached. Once you get emotionally attached, this is the two trajectories I was talking about. Once you get emotionally attached to that person, because sometimes it's your first time experience, like a lot of couples will come to me, a lot of people with broken or shattered hearts will come to me, a lot of brothers, a lot of sisters will come and they'll explain the situations, or they'll come on with their brother or the father or the mother and say, look at what's happened to my daughter, look what's happened to my son, he's depressed now, he's this, he's that. Why? Because there's two trajectories. They get emotionally attached, and then they start to, it's almost like a bit of delusion. They start to sort of like make up scenarios in their head. So what they'll start to like dream, reminiscing, and instead of asking the real hard questions, they'll start to almost like fall into this lovey-dovey sort of like, wow, he's the one, she's the one. Whereas they started off solid, but because of the excessive amount of communication and starting to let the boundaries slip, they fall into an attachment. And that one trajectory is that they have the attachment formed, and then they find it difficult to actually start to see red flags. They can't see red flags anymore. And then that goes on to not seeing compatibility issues, because red flags, compatibility issues, it's all intertwined.
Yes.
And when that happens, they end up thinking this is the one. Do you understand? And then when they don't see the red flags and all this, sometimes it gets to a point where they're saying, look, you know you're for me, Anthony, let's just go out. Let's just do it. And then eventually fall into the same pattern that group two was. Do you get it? Do you get it?
Absolutely.
That's for group three. If they go down that trajectory, they fall back into group two.
Yeah.
And then they start doing these things. Now, the other trajectory is, and I've seen this a lot, is that when a couple will do that, and then they realize like I'm getting too attached. Like the sister will realize like I'm getting too attached to this guy, or the guy will take a step back and say, I'm starting to feel guilty because I've said things to her. I've asked her to take her hijab off. Let me send me a photo with her hair. Then send me this and send me that. And they're both saying like, oh, I can't wait until we get married. I can't wait until the first. Then they start getting into this. Do you understand? So
yeah, absolutely.
They realize that's happened, but then they take a step back for whatever reason. They take a step back. It's a God consciousness, whether it's just whatever it is. They take a step back and they realize this is not right, and they go back and they make tawbah, or they ask for forgive, and they go back to the scenario, but this time with boundaries, and then they get their families involved because they've realized wow, we've really quickly over the last 4 weeks started from something with parameters, boundaries, faith-based principles, and now we're speaking all night, every night. Do you understand? We're sending each other these gifts and emojis and wow, you look so pretty with this abaya, and you're looking so handsome wearing it. It's from there to there. Do you understand? So when they realize, they take a step back, they repent, they ask for forgiveness, they go, and then they actually get family involved. They realize themselves whoa, they get family involved. Then they start having checking mechanisms, and they keep doing, and then they start to analyze the courting stage. They start to analyze and start to ask deep questions, and either it works out or they decide to part. Yeah. Because obviously they've got now that sort of clarity. They're not emotionally involved. And remember the group two, they don't just get emotionally involved. Sorry, and I forgot to mention this. Group two are obviously physically attached as well. Yeah. So and this is what. So these are the three groups, and what I see a lot in our society, just within the Muslim communities. Now the reality is that that when this happens, group two cause a lot of havoc, and I'll explain why. Because they're the group that will then don't care about what family are saying. They don't care what their best friend, because some of the red flags are when your best friends are saying, bro, like she's completely not compatible with you. And or her friends are saying, like, Aisha, can you not see that Jamal is like the complete opposite of you? But she's like, no, Jamal's the one. And like, do you understand? Like, he's like this. We're going. When it gets to that stage, when parents get involved, family get involved, friends get involved, what ends up happening is that they can't see the red flags, and they're the ones that end up causing a lot of problems in the house. Homes get destroyed, a lot of arguments, a lot of fights. Sometimes it's like just it causes sometimes years of like damage that's not easily repaired. Do you understand? And then obviously from that it can lead on to other things, like obviously there's so many cases of sisters falling pregnant and then brothers saying, look, I can't handle this, and then just like leaving it, and like so it's like all these issues come into play. And then obviously people going and getting secret abortions, and then other things start cropping up. And like this is what happens when you get completely like involved to a point where there's no boundaries, no system, and you're just absolutely infatuated with the one, and it causes so many issues. Group 3, again, it can lead to that, but a lot of the times it's like they get to realize what they're doing. So a lot of the people that I'm dealing with is, unfortunately, it's not group 1. That's like a very small handful of people are doing it that way. Group 2 as well is like kind of like an extreme of just people that are just, they're just very sort of like lackadaisical. They don't really care about their faith, and that's just their way because it's just what they've grown up with. They're seeing their best friends, it's the society round about them. It's just what they're doing. And then group 3 are obviously what I'm seeing a lot of, unfortunately. So that's sort of like the best way that I can describe. And my solution for that, very simply, like just a short summary, would be stick to your faith-based principles and listen to when I say this, I'm closing my eyes saying it because I do realize that there's a lot of unhealthy parenting styles, and that in itself is a discussion in itself. But do have the maturity to be able to take a step back when you are courting and allow yourself the space, and allow your family, elders and your friends, allow them that respect, and you give them that respect by listening to what they have to say. It doesn't mean that everything they're saying is going to be right, but trust me, not everything that they're saying is going to be wrong either. And remember, sometimes they have 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of life experience that you just don't have a Scooby-Doo about. And they can see things that you can't see. And so stick to faith-based boundaries, stick to look, if you're going to do something, if you met someone, and a lot of people are going to say, that's just old-fashioned, like, where the hell, do you understand? Like, do you know where we're living? Like, come on, man, we're in 2022. But trust me, I speak to relationship coaches, not just Muslim coaches, but Christian coaches, Jewish relationship coaches, and people from all different backgrounds, and they're all saying the same thing, which is, unfortunately, what's happening now is that people are falling into this bandwagon where they're becoming infatuated, not realizing what they're actually doing. So much heartbreak comes out of that, so much trauma, it's unbelievable. I know so many sisters that have invested in guys, and so many guys have invested in sisters, and they just turn around after 6 months, 1 year, 3 years of courting, and then they're like, masalama.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of bored now.
Yes.
And that sister has invested everything.
Yes.
And I mean everything, like emotionally, spiritually, and physically. She's just said, this is the one we're going to get married anyway. So, and the trauma that causes, the heartbreak that causes, it damages deep.
Absolutely. And Jazakallah khair. Everybody here is loving the conversation. They don't have any questions. They're actually continually agreeing. The only question they're saying is this going to get saved? And now I'm thinking, Ya Allah, please may this be saved, because now I'm getting scared. But okay, inshallah. If this does not get scared, it's not my fault. Inshallah.
Can I just say one thing, just on a side note? Please don't get me wrong. I'm not talking, remember, there's a completely different discussion. Don't listen to some of the things that I'm thinking and just start jumping off thinking, oh, but what about parents who are really sort of like, they're forcing them to marry their cousin, or they're doing this and they're sort of like not listening to my wants and needs. That's a completely different discussion. If that's happening to you, then there's a route where you can discuss that amicably with people in the community, whether they're imams, the ulama, whether they're relationship coaches, whether they're therapists. There are people in your community. You can get family mediation. There's many ways that you can actually resolve these types of issues. But what I'm saying is, and this is fundamental, don't ever, ever underestimate the barakah of being able to have your mother and father's blessings on something. Never underestimate that. I know people that have got married forcing their mum and dads to accept, like literally twisting their arms, going to like staging all this drama in the community and like going against the dad and saying like he's not making me, I've got all these credentials, but he's just saying no for whatever reason. And instead of looking at the deeper, and like instead of the daughter or the son looking at the deeper sort of like reality of why are they saying it and actually trying to analyze it and bringing people to mediate, what ends up happening is that they just basically say to their mums and dads, don't mess with me, because if you do, and they start to blackmail them. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. And I've seen so many cases where marriages like this, they get together and they become pear-shaped within 12 to 36 months. Don't ever underestimate the barakah of having your mother and your father's blessing over something. And this is very important concept to understand. Yes, your mum and dad might not be doing things right. That's where you be mature enough to be able to get third parties involved and explain the situation. But that's if they're being unjust. But if you're just wanting something and you're not accepting any of the red flags, I had a couple not too long ago where the mother and father were such a lovely couple, such a decent sort of like couple, and they were just wanting the best for their daughter. And the daughter's like, don't you mess with me, mum and dad, because this is what I'm going to do if you cross the lines. And the reality is that they were right. The guy that she was, because she'd fallen into she was group number 3 that went off in the trajectory where she got completely emotionally, physically attached to him. And they started becoming more than just courting. It was like boyfriend, girlfriends, full on intimacy. She couldn't see anyone else. And then what ended up happening was that they were saying, but my love, he is like, he's got a past. He's a drug addict. He's currently, do you understand? He's just finished a relationship where the police was called on him because of domestic violence. His ex is saying that he's a violent individual. Don't you see? And she's like, no, he's fine with me. I know, I feel him. I understand him. No one understands him. Yani, do you understand? So this is what I'm trying to say. It's like, be careful.
Alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children and us and our relationships. One last question. I'm just scared, but still, I'll just go ahead with it. I'm scared for the time or for this not being safe, but
okay.
Ya Allah, make the best. Whatever is best for us, make that happen. I mean. So the third is, there are marriages suffering due to addictions, specifically pornography. How do we start conversations to repair such marriages?
How much time have we got? What are we on time?
I have no idea. We're off.
Oh, yikes. Okay. Wow, that's a very good question. Okay, so bismillah. Okay, so look, my advice again is this. Start off from the grassroots level. When you're courting someone, whether that's your first time sort of like looking into marriage or whether you've been divorced 3 times in the past, at the courting stage, you have to have the maturity in this day and age to be able to just ask the person up front, do you have any addictions that I should know about? And you should just say it, and you should ask them with full respect and just be wise, but don't sort of like come in a way that's sort of like almost like you're degrading the person, but just ask through some other conversation and then move on to that topic and just ask, do you? Because at the amount of couples that I see where the wife is on literally crying from the start to the end, or she's not crying, she's raging because she's saying, like, I just found out that my husband has been watching porn for the last 10 years, and he was denying it until I actually showed him the screenshots of all of these conversations that he was having with online these porn sites, right? And also the history of what he's been watching. And then, like, when you actually discuss with them both, the husband is saying there, look, I'm like, I don't know what to say, but I've been watching porn since the age of 13, like since the age of 12, 13 years old when I was in school. And the
That's
thing,
I will attest to that. That's
yeah,
the reality. That's true.
and the reality is that it's something that they use growing up as a coping mechanism. For some of them, a lot of them, when you do a timeline on them and you understand, sometimes it's just a coping mechanism because there's so many issues happening that have happened in their life, whether it's mum and dad divorcing, whether it's they've lived in a toxic home. I mean, it might not just be that. I mean, obviously there's others that have just got addicted through porn, and their families are wonderful. They have no issues in their family. But the reality is that it's become an addictive habit. They've been watching it from a very young age. And then obviously as they mature, as they get into university, when after they finish university, they get married, they still have this habit. I have people, and I'm going to be very frank on this live. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I deal with people just now who are well-known people in the community, who are imams, who are sort of like well-to-do individuals who have been suffering with this addiction.
Yes.
I know couples who are like, you look at them and they're like, you almost think that they're an ideal couple, and they're like, and all sort of like the society sort of like things are like, they have this certain type of career, they're a certain type of look, and they're this and that, but inside they're actually absolutely crumbling. Why? Because there's this addiction behind all of this. And that addiction leads, by the way, just to let you know, not only does it destroy you from a neurological perspective over years of doing this, not only can you get a plethora of issues when it comes to, because it can kickstart depression, it can kickstart anxiety, it can kickstart erectile dysfunction and all these other issues, intimacy problems between husband and wife. There's so many issues that can come out of this. But the reality is, like, if you don't, as a team, so like as in day one, ask and find out, because you'll be surprised. Yes, there's some people that just watch it occasionally, and they might just be honest and say, yep, I watch it occasionally. Then you have to say to them, look, this is not something that I accept, because this is, for me, it's un-Islamic. And are you sure you're not addicted? And then you can have this discussion and sort of like carry it forward with them. If someone turns around and they have the maturity and they have the sort of like that ability just to be honest and say to you during the courting stage, look, I think I am. I've been watching it from a really young age. And if you think that everything else ticks the boxes, like this person is like really, really, mashallah, good in every other department, but he has this addiction, then you ask him to go to addiction therapy, you ask him to heal, you ask him to take a year out, do whatever he has to do, and do what it takes. But it starts at the courting stage. If that stage is over and you're already married, and then 10 years in the line or 3 years down the line, you realize this, and you realize that this habit has led to infidelity. Do you understand? It's led to infidelity in all its spheres, whether it's emotional attachments outside to others, whether it's to, was it girlfriends outside or prostitutes or escorts, whatever that's led to this, then it's time for you to sit down, have a real sort of like heart-to-heart discussion about your marriage and your relationship and how you're going to move forward. If you have children in there, remember, there's two things. If someone's doing it and they don't care, you have to understand, there's some people that just don't give a damn. You can say whatever you want to them, and they're like, it's my life. They understand, you don't control me. I do this for this family. This is my little wee escapism. I don't go out and drink. I don't go out and do this or do that. This is my little wee to go to. I don't smoke hash. I don't do that. And some people, believe it or not, bring up that argument with their wives. And if there's that sort of situation, then you really need to sort of like get family involved and like really sort of like decide on the future of that marriage. You understand? If someone comes to you and says, look, and accepts it and says, look, I've had this secret life, I know I've been deceptive, and every time you've gone out with the kids, or every time you've done this, I've been jumping, like you've stayed over at your mum's house or something, I've been on porn, I've been doing this. But really, trust me, it's not, I love you, I respect you, I love the kids, I love this home, but I've just been doing this from such a young age. I don't know how to get out of this. Then I would recommend that you then, obviously, with family, with friends, take some professional advice, see what you have to do to be able to get that individual some proper therapy, whether that comes in the form of, and I'll mention a couple here, there's a Muslim group called purifyyourgaze.com. You should go to them. They're a really good outfit, faith-based perspective with scientific tools to help you get over this sort of like addictive nature. Then there's others like a group called Fortify, who are basically a group who are scientific based. So they use scientific modalities to be able to help you break the sort of like, it's like to break these sort of like addictive habits of porn. And they're both really good sort of like services out there in the community. And again, if you feel like I've dealt with folks that are not just addicts as in porn addicts, it's actually developed into something far bigger. They're actually like now sex addicts, and like from soft porn to hard porn, then to fetish. And because their brain is so scrambled over the decades of watching it, their level of stimulation has become so much now that they need so much stimuli. They've then gone on to that, and now then they go on to like really, it's almost like multiple adultery, multiple sort of like using a prostitute. So when it gets to that level, then obviously that's where you need a sex therapist or an addiction therapist, someone that can really harness in the actual issue. And a lot of the time, believe it or not, and this is a sad case, is that I know a lot of people sort of like look really down on people who have got these sort of addictions, but the reality is that a lot of these folks have got their inner child that are damaged, and it's their inner child. And this is a full different discussion about attachment theory and stuff like that. There's 4 different styles of attachment theory, but anyway, that's a different sort of like topic. But their inner child has been damaged, and so when you do a timeline on some of these people that have got addictive personalities, whether they're addicted to alcohol, drugs, or whether it's porn or sex addiction, whatever it is, a lot of them, if you do a timeline, like a lot of people that I'll refer on to like psychotherapists or sex therapists and addiction therapists, sorry. And what will end up happening is that I'll get a report back. I'll be told that by then, because obviously I'm dealing with them with their relationship. And then if I see that there's something here that's out of like it's not my forte, I'll forward them on to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a psychotherapist, or someone that could deal with that trauma. And so what end up happening is that they'll come back and say, yep, they did a timeline and they found out that it's actually because I was molested by the ages of 8 to 13. I was actually sexually abused by my uncle or by my cousin or by my neighbor. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now as an adult. And so like this, I mean, there's so many reasons it can be, but unfortunately we need to realize and sort of like take a step back and realize that sometimes it's because of that person's inner child is broken because of issues that have happened to him in the past, whether it's an abandonment from a parent or whether it's been a toxic, violent, abusive home, whether it's been excessive bullying, but something triggers them off to start becoming addictive, like addicted to drugs or extremely violent or addicted to sex or pornography, like all these things. Unfortunately, if you find that your partner has this, you really need to get them to seek some serious trauma therapy to be able to understand their trauma and to be able to heal. But if you're at a point where you just can't handle it, then obviously speak to your family, speak to your friends, speak to your family, make a decision. And whether you want to stay in that marriage or move on, and that's obviously at your discretion. I know some people that just, they just, the amount of infidelity, it's just been so immense, stemming from porn and then moving up the ranks, all these other things, that they just can't do it. I mean, there's many times I've spoke to couples that I've actually had to turn to, let's say, the wife and say, by the way, have you been tested like for any sexual transmitted diseases or anything? Because I found out like that he's been like with a multitude of prostitutes, and then he's going back and like and then obviously the guy just can't control himself because of this addiction. So the thing now is that it's all about healing, understanding the situation, being mature and amicable about it, taking a step back. If that means parting, separation, divorce, then that means that. If it means trying to do some things to get that person, remember, I've gone to an extreme, obviously, where I'm talking about like an extreme element, but obviously it starts off, some people it's just a habit of watching porn, but then it can lead to a plethora of serious issues. So if it's at whatever stage it is on this sort of like line here, then you can obviously use your discretion of what you want to do and where you want to go with that. So
yeah. Jazakallahu khair. Alhamdulillah. I am extremely honored, grateful. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was so well explained, step by step by step, that there weren't any questions. And everybody whoever is asking questions, their questions would answer.
I hope so.
Inshallah. Now I'm just hoping, Ya Allah, please let this be saved. I mean, 7 lessons on the myths of marriage.
Yes.
A wonderful book to have.
Thank you so much. I mean, if people are looking for more information, if they can just jump on my website. It's just my first and surname, QasimRafique.com. QasimRafique.com. I'm sure, inshallah, sister will put up the web link at the bottom.
Yeah. Yes.
But with that, if there's a lot of there's obviously a lot of issues nowadays. There's a lot of couples going through. I mean, I deal with everything from premarital all the way to like the more serious cases like infidelity, and obviously serious cases where there's a lot of sort of like parental alienation and other things like that. So look, at the end of the day, wherever you are, if you know any friends or family that are looking for some help, or from some sort of like new sort of like tools or strategies to be able to overcome some of the hurdles that they're dealing with in their relationships, then please, inshallah, just send them my way or to some other, inshallah, brother or sister who, obviously I'm going to speak from a faith-based perspective, from like with an Islamic background, that has a good understanding, and they can sort of like infuse together faith-based principles with obviously modern sort of like psychology and sort of like relationship strategies and tools to be able to sort of like move forward and try to get over a lot of the issues a lot of people are finding nowadays. Remember, at the end of the day, the most important thing to understand is, don't just call it quits. Don't just call it quits on your marriage, because I tell you this, and I'll end on this. When your children, let's just say you can't stand each other, you've grown apart, but you've not really done everything that you possibly can. Like, you haven't had family mediation, you haven't had people from the community to sort of like sit and discuss with, you haven't gone to people of knowledge, or you haven't gone to a couples therapist or a relationship coach. If you haven't done this or done some homework, read material on this sort of like topic, or watched videos, and if you haven't done your part, okay, and if you've got children, and if you divorce, what's going to happen is, it's very important, because I deal with the aftermath of this. I deal with people who were children at one point, going through, seeing mum and dad go through all of this, and then they become adults, and then they come to me as an adult, newly married, and like I've had grown like men who are just newly married in tears saying, I don't understand why I can't regulate my emotions. I don't know why I can't express to my wife. I just find this block and do this and do that. When you start discussing it more, a lot of it is because they're modeling what they've seen their mum and dads do, their behavior, what they've done, and how they've acted out in the house. And this is the thing, there will be a point, if you do everything that you can as a husband and wife, and you really work on your relationship, you give it your all. No one marries to get divorced. I mean, you know that, and I know that. But if you don't go in and try everything that you possibly can to try to rectify the situation, then one day when your child becomes an adult and he comes back or she comes back to you and looks at you and says, Ammi or Mum or Abu or Dad, and they look at you as an adult and say, why did you divorce Mum? Or Mum, why did you divorce Dad? Or do you understand? Like, what happened? And you can't give them a clear answer. You kind of waffle your way through. And if you can't, like, if you waffle your way through, they'll be disheartened, and it can cause a plethora of issues with them, their internal conflict. But if you can look at them eye to eye and say, my love, my son, my daughter, this is what happened between your mum and I. We were together for X amount of years. We tried this, we tried that. We did couples coaching. We went to therapy. We did that. We had family mediation. We did all our homework. We read, but still, beta or beti, it just never worked out. And there's just incompatibility. There was other issues there. So we amicably ended. We parted amicably. Trust me, your son or your daughter, when they're of that age, with a little bit more maturity and sense, when they ask you and you give them an answer like that, they'll be appeased internally, and they'll know that mum and dad tried their best. But a lot of people are just like gun ho, just like, it's been 16 months, and so, do you know something? you're not for me, and do you understand? Or it's like the guy's like, I don't like the way you make your biryani. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's almost like there's petty things, and instead of sitting back and getting help, getting advice, understanding love languages, understanding communication models, understanding conflict management, understanding all these things, the tools for an effective repair conversation, just some tools and strategies to help you overcome some of these problems. If you haven't done that, you're not doing your marriage justice. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'll end on that. Bismillah, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you so much. Thank you so
People
much.
can find Brother Qasim at www.qasimrafique.com. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Ya Allah, please be saved. And
I hope it does. I hope it does.
And please get the book, Seven Life Lessons on the Myths of Marriage.
Can I just ask your viewers just to keep me in your dua, because I'm actually in the process of finishing a new book, which I'm looking to get published soon. So please just make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for me to complete the book. And inshallah, thank you so much. Thank you.
All the best. We're looking forward to the new book, Brother Qasim, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We'll have another live once that book is out.
Yes, inshallah.
Online promise. I'm booking you online now, live.
Okay, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.